As we all know, the history of the Wasteland didn't begin with the Wasteland itself or even with the Great War. The history of the Fallout world is our history, but altered, giving rise to this unique world that captured the hearts of hundreds, thousands, and even millions of gamers. We love the lore of this world. We tell stories from it about what came after the war and what happened before, but we rarely speak of the moment humanity in this universe stepped into the abyss. Today, we'll try to answer that question and briefly examine the entire history of the Fallout world. July 16, 1945. On this day, the first ever test of an atomic bomb was conducted at the Los Alamos laboratory in the state of New Mexico. It marked the beginning of a whole chain of events that changed both our world and the world of Fallout. Because already on August 6, 1945, a city, Hiroshima, was destroyed using the very same kind of nuclear warhead. Tens of thousands perished, even more were left homeless or without purpose. The world plunged not only into fear of the future, but into the Cold War. A month later, on September 2, 1945, Japan surrendered, marking the end of World War II. Following these events, the history of the Fallout world took a very different path, one that, thankfully, we did not. A defining date was 1961, during which the first man in space was the American Carl Bell. In 1969, the United States of America changed its structure from a union of 50 states to a union of 13 commonwealths, all in the name of fighting communism and strengthening the nation. For many years, the U.S. would develop rapidly. The American dream would flourish. Children had cheerful childhoods, the elderly lived peaceful lives, and the country advanced, not only economically and socially, but militarily as well. By 2002, the company Westech had become the largest private contractor and supplier for the U.S. government. Its focus, weapons development and biomedical research. America's finest scientists worked at Westech. Everyone aspired to be part of it, except the House family. On June 25, 2020, they welcomed the birth of Robert Edwin House, the future top graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, founder of Robco, perhaps the greatest mind the U.S., if not the entire world, ever produced. He gave America the shape it held up until its destruction. We all know what this man did for the world, and his contributions went far beyond the Pip-Boy and robotic assistants. But back to history, where another key date is the beginning of the Resource Wars. It began with the U.S. invasion of Mexico in 2051. By April 2052, Europe had also run out of fossil fuels and began annexing eastern territories. 3 months later, in late July, the United Nations collapsed, further inflaming the resource wars. In December 2053, Tel Aviv was destroyed using nuclear weapons, triggering a cascade of nuclear bombardments between Europe and the East. Watching these events unfold, the US in 2054 initiated a program to construct 122 nuclear vaults, where, in the event of nuclear war, part of the population could be preserved to ensure the nation's survival. By 2060, with Europe entirely depleted of fuel and the East nearly bled dry, the European Commonwealth was formed, successfully transitioning from fossil fuels to nuclear energy. But not everyone abandoned the old ways. In 2066, China invaded Alaska, hoping to seize the last remaining fuel reserves. The war dragged on for a year, until 2067, when US troops began using the first models of power armor, dramatically shifting the tide of battle. Soon after, in 2072, following Canadian protests against deforestation used to support US forces in Alaska, and after protesters sabotaged the Alaskan pipeline, the US invaded Canada. In 2073, the US government became the Enclave, no longer aiming to save all American citizens who clearly wouldn't survive a nuclear war, but instead to preserve key government structures and protect the nation's most important individuals while maximizing America's global military dominance. That same year, Westech launched the Virion Immunity Project, aimed at developing a universal cure for all diseases, including radiation. And by 2074, America had invaded China. While the US was busy claiming foreign lands, the government decided to accelerate weapons development. In January 2076, it dispatched Colonel Robert Spindle and Captain Roger Maxson to the West Tech Research Center in California. Meanwhile, by 2076, Canada had been fully annexed. The year 2077 began with the US regaining control of Alaska on January 10th. The Chinese threat was driven from its shores. More than 6 months later, Captain Maxson, stationed at West Tech by order of the Enclave, discovered horrifying biological experiments being conducted on prisoners of war. They were exposed to the Forced Evolutionary Virus, FEV, causing grotesque mutations. Overcome by emotion, Maxson executed all the scientists and on October 20th declared himself and his followers deserters from the US Army. No one responded. No one came. The bunker could no longer be exited. The reasons for the Enclave's actions were unknown to him. At some point, around the same time, the government abandoned the mainland and relocated to an oil rig in the Pacific Ocean. 3 days later, on October 23rd, 2077, the world was plunged into darkness. No one knows who launched first or how many warheads fell, but everything was destroyed in 2 hours. Most didn't survive. Those who didn't make it into vaults perished instantly. Or, if they lived, it's unclear if that was a blessing or a curse. Many became ghouls, sentient zombies, if you will, immune to radiation but forever no longer human. Some would despise them, others would help them. Alongside these unfortunates, animals too began to change, some gradually, others almost immediately. It was these beings that Captain Maxson and his followers encountered when they finally exited the West Tech facility in November 2077. Emerging into a vast but altered world, Maxson formed the Brotherhood of Steel, a militarized organization, establishing it in a government bunker at Lost Hills. Meanwhile, the ghouls formed their own community, Necropolis. Residents of Vault 12, which through a purely coincidental and totally intentional on Vault Tech's part malfunction hadn't sealed completely, suffered radiation exposure. Yet they retained societal order and would continue preserving humanity's knowledge for years after the bombs fell. Over the following centuries, countless events unfolded. For example, in June 2102, Richard Moreau, resident of Vault 8, tragically transformed into the Master, creator of the super mutants, after exposure to FEV in the depths of the West Tech labs. No longer quite human and now possessing supernatural abilities, Richard studied the virus, first testing it on animals, spawning hideous creatures, and then on humans, creating some of the Wasteland's super mutants, terrifying, sterile, ageless monsters, immune to radiation. That same year, Vault 76 in Virginia, a control vault, opened its doors. In 2161, a resident of Vault 13, one of the last sealed vaults, ventured into the world to find a water chip to save their community. During the journey, they met many, visited dozens of places, and left behind a trail of mixed rumors. Some said the Vault Dweller, as they came to be known, was a hero. Others said they were a monster. What to believe is up to you, but the facts remain. They saved Vault 13, aided Shady Sands, the future birthplace of the NCR, killed the Master, and retrieved the water chip. But they were denied re-entry by the Overseer for the safety of others. With no choice, the Vault Dweller walked the wasteland and founded the settlement of Arroyo in 2162. By 2167, it was fully established. Others in the ruins of America weren't idle either. In 2189, Shady Sands, saved by the Vault Dweller, and 4 other towns formed what is now known as the New California Republic, NCR. In 2208, the Vault Dweller left Arroyo, never to be seen again. Then, in 2241, a chosen one set out to find the GEC, Garden of Eden creation kit, to save Arroyo and green its surroundings. Along the way, they visited Vault 13, rumored to house a GEC. In exchange for help, the locals handed over the device. But upon returning home, the Chosen One found disaster. Unknown forces had attacked, killing warriors and kidnapping others. In the search that followed, the Chosen One discovered the Enclave's oil rig, reclaimed the Gek, and rescued Arroyo's people. In 2247, Edward Sallow and Joshua Graham, using their knowledge and the native tribes of the Wasteland, founded Caesar's Legion. By 2274, it rivaled the Old World's Commonwealth in size. In 2277, the lone wanderer left Vault 101 to find their father. During the journey, they activated the Liberty Prime Project and Project Purity, making the waters near the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. safe to drink. Simultaneously, they found themselves embroiled in the Brotherhood Enclave conflict and the so-called Super Mutant War. In 2281, a courier was betrayed by a powerful figure in New Vegas, a betrayal that, in the end, would reshape the fate of the entire city and perhaps a huge swath of the Wasteland. The latest known hero of the Wastelands is the sole survivor of Vault 111, who searches for their son, and along the way seeks solutions to many of Boston's Commonwealth's problems. And that's the brief history of the Fallout world. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. We'd also like to add that this video is the beginning of a whole series on the history of Fallout, spanning from the pre-war era to the events of Fallout 4. If you'd like to support us, check the video description for a link to Patreon. Thank you for watching and stay safe.